and welcome to today's program, Beyond Utopia. We've got a special screening for you of this documentary, followed by a very unique opportunity to interact with two of the producers of the film and our very special North Korean refugee expert, Seohyun Lee. So Rachel Cohen and Sumi Terry are the producers who will be here after the film, so stick around so you can talk to them. My name is Jonathan Corrado. I'm the Director of Policy for the Korea Society. This movie that you're about to see is very unique. It's notable not only for its content, but also for the very fact that it exists. The raw footage was captured by refugees themselves as they embarked on a fraught attempt to flee North Korea. The immediacy of this presentation evokes a startling realization. We are witnessing real human lives hanging in the balance. Real people whom we come to know and care for over the course of the film. One wrong step, one unlucky encounter, one unfriendly person along the way could spell doom for the entire family. At its heart, the story is heartbreaking, tender, and moving. It's a portrayal of families trying to find safety and freedom, trying to stay together. I won't spoil anything further, but I will point out that the film leaves no doubt in our mind that the odds are stacked against our heroes and that the stakes are existential. You will be on the edge of your seats. Aside from being a compelling narrative, this film will no doubt also be a positive social influence. There are many ways that this is the case, but I just want to mention two for you here tonight before we watch. First, to make Korean Peninsula unification possible, or even rapprochement between the two Koreas possible, it is imperative that we understand people from North Korea and show them empathy. I started helping North Korean refugees in Seoul nearly 15 years ago. I've continued friendships with a number of them over the years. Many have experienced traumas that are difficult for me to truly comprehend. Even though that these refugees speak the same language and receive support from the South Korean government, many refugees have trouble acculturating to a society that is economically advanced, technologically adept, and socially complex. Refugees have higher rates of unemployment and higher rates of suicide. Up to 1/5 of them regret their decision to leave their home country. We tend to focus on what refugees gain by leaving North Korea. This film reminds us of what people leave behind when they make that fateful choice. Despite all of these challenges, if unification ever emerges as a possibility, North Korean refugees will play a leading role. The way the world embraces them today is therefore the ultimate gauge of that worthy goal's feasibility. This film is important because it helps us to understand North Koreans better, to generate deep empathy for them on a wide scale, and hopefully to inspire action to make their lives just a little bit better. My second point, then I'm almost done. I'll get off the stage. In 2013, the UN Human Rights Council established a commission of inquiry on human rights in the DPRK. This was a thorough investigation into the North Korean regime's systematic, widespread, and grave violations of human rights, a very important milestone in the effort to illuminate North Korea's crimes against humanity and pressure the regime to change. In the intervening years, the human rights movement has struggled to maintain global attention, with reports emerging now of increased food insecurity, even starvation, coupled with the regime's continued brutal repression and its effective crackdown on the border that has reduced escapees to a slow trickle. The urgency for action has never been higher. I believe this film, with its poignant message and its artistic merits, will help the movement gather steam once again, overcoming the impediments of fractured institutions and wavering attention. It comes as no surprise that Beyond Utopia won the Audience Award for U.S. Documentary Features at the 2023 Sundance Film Festival. And just 2 weeks ago, it was shortlisted for an Academy Award for Best Documentary Feature. We're grateful for the Korea Foundation and our corporate sponsors for their support, which makes this program possible. I'll remind everyone that although this screening is free, we encourage donations to the filmmakers, and you could do so at the link on the program webpage where you signed up for this program. We are heartened to host a lot of you here tonight in our house, and we've received over 250 registrants to watch the Q&A via recorded video. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to check out the film, which premieres on Hulu next week. If you're here in person, stick around for the Q&A afterwards, where you'll have the opportunity to ask questions to Sue, Rachel, and Seohyun. Thank you very much, and enjoy the film.
Imagine waking up one day and realizing that you are born on a completely different planet, and everything you learned was lie, and the heroes you worship were actually monstrous villains.
In North Korea, there is no freedom of religion, there's no freedom of thought, there's no freedom of press.
The regime told us we are living in utopia, but
we are captured in a huge virtual prison.
Sometimes people will die through torture and there's no recourse.
너무 매우 많이 아팠어요. 내가 북한 사람을 도와야겠구나.
제가 교회는 또 이렇게 처음 또 이렇게 방문을 전화로만 이렇게 간절하게 막.
그 우리 저기 북쪽에서 넘어온 아이. 예. 엄마가 지금 여기 와 있어요.
네, 목사님.
예.
그 장벽에서 지금 사람 가서 지금 나왔는데요.
주시가 우리를 아주 맨발로
같이 가서 구출하도록 하고. 네.
정말 감사합니다.
우리가 그 오는 장벽에서 나오는 구간이 첼로 좀. 스파 찰리 여기 위험한 버스 뒤로 가 뒤로.
지금 아들도 다 피하고 뭐 죽을 것 같다더라고.
어때 지금 압록강 물은 어때 불었어요 어때요?
그 비가 오니까 조금 불어가지고서
이
지금.
정도면 애가 위험한데.
떨어지지도 못하고 죽고 있.
너무 여유가 없는 시간.
살아있대요. 제가 어떻게든 제가 어미가 돼가지고.
버리고 싶어서 버린 것도 아니고 그리고 대다수 탈북자들이 지금 생계를 위해서
All right. Thank you all for joining us tonight. I'm very happy and honored to be joined by our esteemed guests here on our stage today. We had the chance to watch Beyond Utopia here at the Korea Society, and I know I, as well as the audience, are extremely excited to hear from you all a bit more about the film. So I'll start off with some more scene-setting questions before turning it over to the audience so they have a chance to also pick your brains about the film as well. So without further ado, I wanted to start off with Sue, because you actually come from a more policy and intelligence-oriented background, and now you've become an executive producer on this film. And so I was wondering, producer on this film. I was wondering if you could tell us why it was so important to you, for you to make this film, and if you could expand upon the significance that you believe Beyond Utopia has in the North Korean human rights movement and conversation.
So I'm not from the film industry. I work in the government. I spent majority of my career working in the U.S. government and then in academia and think tank world as a North Korea watcher, analyst, scholar, and talking head, basically. Not anything to do with film industry except the fact that I like to watch films. But about 6 years ago, my producing partner, she's not here, came to me, and she was one of my few mom friends I had in New York. I just knew her that she owned some sort of, she's in film business. She knew me as a North Korea expert. She read this book, this memoir, The Girl with Seven Names, and she was deeply moved by it. And she came to me and she said, "Sue, do you know about this? Do you know all this that's going on in North Korea?" And I said, "Of course I do. I'm a North Korea expert." But she's like, "Well, then why is it this is not something that's familiar? Why do we not know about this as much?" Sorry, my hair is stuck. And I said, well, this is not even anybody's fault, because I think the media's focus have been such overwhelmingly all about weapons of mass destruction, missile tests. It's not ever enough about the human rights issues or humanitarian crisis that's going on in North Korea. And so for me, I spent majority of my career following North Korea issues, writing op-eds and briefings and testifying. But there was a certain level of frustration with that. And I knew just the power of this medium, this film, in terms of being able to reach out to people, right? Just people just watching this one film for a couple hours and it just have a different resonance. As a North Korea watcher, we talk a lot about statistics, right? We talk about 2 million people, the 2 million people perished during the famine years in mid-1990s, where there's 120,000 prisoners, political prisoners that are sitting in North Korean prison camp right now, or that China just sent back 600 North Korean defectors back to North Korea, knowing exactly what kind of fate awaits them. Yet, it's kind of like easy to sort of dismiss that, right? It's like 120,000 people in a political prison camp. That sounds really sad but it's not like watching just few specific stories like this, right? You're not going to forget about Seohyun's son right now, who's sitting in a political prison camp, right? So with this kind of, with this individual stories, with this specificity, there's a universal story to be told. So I do think, when I look at my career, I'm very proud of having been part of this project. I do think it's very important in terms of raising awareness on the human rights issues. And I do hope that, it is having that kind of impact in terms of awareness and so on. So I am very fortunate to have been part of this project, and I'm very, very proud of it.
Absolutely. I mean, all the elements that you touched upon are what made this movie so powerful. And I know anyone who's watched it, regardless of their background and understanding of the situation on the Korean Peninsula, will be moved by it. And so besides being an extremely moving film, it's also really ambitious. It's kind of a one-of-a-kind project that you guys executed really wonderfully. And so I was wondering, actually, Rachel, if you could talk to us about how you took Beyond Utopia from kind of an idea stage to execution, and if you could tell us a bit about some of the unique challenges in filming and producing this film,
Sure.
And how you guys overcame them.
Sure. Well, the aforementioned producing partner that Sue mentioned is my producing partner. We're a New York company. We make independent films and have been doing it for a long time. And nothing about this film was predetermined. I mean, documentaries never are, obviously, but this one started off, as Sue said, as a kind of a portrait of Seohyun Lee and a look at dislocation and being a refugee and much more of a sort of portrait, a sort of a memoir. And there was really rich, interesting material in there. But it wasn't until we went to Seoul that we started to meet the defector community and interview people. And that sort of peeled one layer of the onion for us. And we thought, well, we definitely need to make this something more present and more active. But we weren't quite sure how. And we interviewed 10, 12 defectors. We met different people in the underground sort of network. But when we met Pastor Kim and connected with him, that's sort of when this whole thing took us in another direction. And it really did take us. We spent many months getting to know Pastor Kim and gaining his trust and talking and coming to an understanding that we really were interested in making the same kind of movie. And once he trusted us and he invited us to embed sort of in these real-time defections, we had a choice to make. And of course, we made the choice to follow it wherever it took us. And so that is how the movie was, and that took a couple of years, really. This whole process was 5 years from the time we optioned the memoir to now, basically. So we sort of he was our guide into this world, and he was our guide in terms of how to stay safe, how to keep our crew safe, what we could and couldn't do, where we could shoot. And a lot of the archival material is really from him. So it was really just about staying as present as we can and gaining the trust of our participants and documenting as much as we could.
But I would just point out that this was such a high-risk film for not only, obviously, the royal family and everybody else, because they are living this defection, but but just as filmmakers, we had no idea where this film was going to go, right? There could have been no film.
Right.
I mean, they could have been captured very easily and sent back, or any number of things could have happened. So there was no predictability here, right? We had no idea where this was headed.
Right. Very much true.
Absolutely. And I mean, for those who haven't seen the film yet, the film primarily focuses on two stories: one family's escape from North Korea and one mother's attempts to get her son out of North Korea. And I was wondering, since we're joined here by our dear friend Seohyun Lee, if you wanted to share a bit about your journey from North Korea and what you found most difficult since coming stateside in terms of garnering more international attention regarding this issue.
I mean, I think I watched this documentary for twice, in June in California, and then one in Texas this September, I think, and I remember that I was crying like a baby. So no matter where they're from and what their backgrounds is, I think all the North Korean people who escape from the country share similar kind of experience and feelings. So by the time I decided to give up my North Korean identity, I was already in China studying abroad. And I had my North Korean passport, which enabled me and my family members purchase the ticket to one of the Southeast Asia, and then took a transit flight to South Korea within 36 hours. So it's definitely different stories, but I still vividly remember that feeling of fear I had at the moment. It was like a gun pointed at my back, and there's a high possibility I could be captured by the North Korean government or China assist the capturing process. So I could feel why they were all entire family cried immediately as soon as they crossed the river. I would say, yeah, that was exactly what I felt when I was on board of South Korea flight. I felt immediately the sense of the relief, but at the same time, I was troubled with the thought that I'm gonna be labeled as a traitor and then a selfish person, and the possibility that I might never be able to go back to my homeland. Right. That was overwhelming for 20, 30 years ago to handle it. Yeah. And to answer your another question, the later question, I would say the most challenging part is overcoming the persuasive sense of distance and disconnection that many people who never experienced North Korea hold towards the nation. And then the media often exaggerating, or there are so many different stories, versions of North Korea. So I think people are missing that this is the human story. Right. Yeah.
And I mean, Sue and Rachel, as you guys have been touring Beyond Utopia, what have you found to be, I guess my question is, what have you found to be most difficult in your experiences in garnering that international attention? You've been working in this field for so long, and now you have this film out. What do you think was the most shocking for audiences when watching this?
Well, actually, we had such a overwhelmingly positive experience with the audiences. We traveled, we did a lot of film festivals, and I don't know how many we've done since basically we premiered at Sundance, and we won Audience Award there. We brought the entire Rowe family, and we also traveled a lot with Pastor Kim and Seohyun. And the audience's reception have been just overwhelming. People, they go up to Seohyun, and they literally, strangers are hugging her and say, we don't speak the same language. We're not from same culture, but I'm a mother or I'm a parent, and I feel you, and I'm going to be thinking about you and your son, and so on. So it has been very positive. So it was just a reminder that we just need to raise awareness. I think they didn't, even though educated people, I don't think they understood the extent. And even for me, you say what's been a surprising thing. Even when I was watching this film for the first time, just watching this, even for a so-called expert like myself, I knew in theory how things were supposed to go because I spent a lot of time with defectors. I debriefed many defectors in my career, and they would tell me, you leave North Korea and I'll go through this, and went to this safe house and was, like we had a conversation, things like this. And I knew it in theory, but it's just a totally different experience to see it really as it was happening. Yeah. So I think that was even like the fellow Korea watchers and experts, they said this was just a very different kind of experience because there's no other film like that where you capture as things were happening. Because most of times defectors arrive in South Korea, they go through Hanawon, they come back out, and it's some sort of they are remembering things as they tell you. Yeah. So, but that's just that's.
I mean, I think like the simple answer to that in terms of the response is that overwhelmingly people are amazed at how little they know. Just the complete lack of awareness, the thin, what do we know? We know about the strongman, we know about parades, we know about missiles. There is zero discussion, as both of you were saying, about the 26 million North Koreans. And in structuring the film, I mean, this could have been a different kind of movie where we just embed with the real-time defections and followed it. But part of why we sort of decided we really wanted to pull out into what we call the interstitials is to really contextualize not just the politics of North Korea, but the everyday reality of lives of the people as a way to understand both our subjects, but also the broader reality. And so those two things are kind of in dialogue, the sort of the micro-personal real-time thriller story and the sort of the macro look at this place.
Which gives a background to these characters, right. Like what they were fleeing.
Right. Right.
So.
I mean, so that is, I have a 19-year-old son and his friends have been watching it and they're all incredibly moved, but also just dumbfounded how little they know.
And I think, certain scenes are particularly illuminating. I've been talking about, North Korea as a society that's most heavily indoctrinated. It's all about ideological indoctrination. You don't have to lecture that, right? You see a moment here with a grandma when she arrives in Vietnam and she sees how well developed it is. And her instinct is to say, well, this can't be our leader's fault because he's so young and he's brilliant. It must be our fault. Or like, who's still the greatest? The girls who say, well, it's Kim Jong-un is still, one of the greatest leader. I forgot the exact line. It shows you just it's not something that's rehearsed, right? So.
To me, I think that was the most heartbreaking part.
Yeah.
Of the girls,
of the
or the how deep the indoctrination.
Yeah. She still tried to avoid to say any criticism.
I know.
About the camp or the system.
Yeah.
Despite having, she has escaped already.
Right. Yeah. There's no other reality that she has ever known. Yeah. That was very chilling.
Right. And as we're talking about the family now, we kind of learn from what you guys mentioned, the interstitials, and through Pastor Kim's network and how he's also helping them, that many North Koreans escape by crossing the border shared with China. And then the journey really doesn't end there. For those that are escaping, it isn't really about just getting out of North Korea, but it's about getting to a safe country. And while following the families, the family, we see that they're not safe traveling through countries like China, Vietnam, and Laos. And so I was wondering, Sue, if you could talk about the role that other countries play in the fate of North Korean refugees and how geopolitical tensions kind of affect the plight of the North Korean people.
So I'm sure Chana doesn't like this film necessarily because, again, we don't have to make it so explicit, but you can see it very clearly. Fleeing North Korea is just the first step. That's, a lot of people might think, but that's the hardest part. That is not the hardest part. It's an important initial part, but because of the Chinese government and other communist governments' policies, and Chinese government's policy in particular, and they treat all North Korean refugees, they label them as economic migrants. And because their policy is to forcibly repatriate them back to North Korea, you see what the North Korean defectors have to go through. That's why I just said, recently they've just sent back 600 North Korean defectors, and there are another 2,000 or more North Korean defectors that are sitting in Chinese prison camps. And it's not only when they're sent back, but just, particularly for women, what they have to go through. They're sold into prostitution, as pornography workers, as sold into as marriage brides to Chinese farmers and so on. So it's really these policies of these governments that's also making it extremely difficult for the North Korean defectors. And that's why until they get to Thailand, they were not safe at all. So I think this is just another part of the film that really makes that point, just without us trying to make that point.
Right.
But I mean, you lived in China, you spent some time in China, and then you ended up coming to South Korea.
Yeah,
so.
But I was legally staying in North Korea, so I never had.
You mean in China? You were legally,
in
right.
China. So
right.
I had never similar experience. What just Dr. Su explained, but
yeah.
But I mean, when we talk about trying to change policy, it is also about pressuring the Chinese government to change its policy.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just really a North Korean issue. If we think about it just like that, people are thinking about pressuring just North Korea, but there are other countries involved here that we also need to raise awareness about kind of their complicity in what's going on in the fate of these people.
It's outrageous.
Yeah. And so, I mean, obviously this is an extremely groundbreaking film. You guys, there's like unprecedented levels of hidden camera footage of the escapees' journeys. And that's something I feel like the Kim regime probably wouldn't really like. They wouldn't be very happy about that. And so you might recall in 2014, the Sony Pictures hack. In the run-up to the release of The Interview, which was the satirical film about North Korea and North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-un, American intelligence officials concluded that the North Korean government sponsored the attack, and the North Korean government has denied that. But now, thinking with that in mind and thinking about the backlash to The Interview, I wonder, since Beyond Utopia has gained such critical acclaim, if you guys are worried about any retaliation from North Korea, if you're thinking about how the Kim regime might respond both externally and also internally within its own borders to kind of the attention that's being raised from the film, and if we should be prepared for any like responses or actions, if any, from the Kim regime.
Well,
yeah.
Well, this issue came up a lot in our discussion. If I can be just very frank, I think this was more of a concern from the West. So we are in a way, kind of, what's the right word? How would I say it politically,
Like paranoid or censoring?
We were censoring ourselves, this, perhaps, the distributors and potential distributors, they were concerned about this Sony hacking issue, just exactly what you mentioned, whether this will lead to that. I personally felt that this is just a very, very different kind of film that was satire. I don't know if anybody's seen The Interview, but it literally blows up Kim Jong-un, very crass kind of way, right? This is a different kind of film, and I'm sure they're not going to be thrilled about it. But it's I don't think this is necessarily the right kind of comparison. And it's not like no other documentaries have been made about North Korea. There are some documentaries or, just different kind of treatments about North Korea. I myself is part of this YouTube cable show, bi-weekly show. We're always critical of the Kim regime. So this was not too much of our concern, even though, and that certainly didn't stop us from obviously going forward with this film. But I do think that was a concern for, certain distributors or companies.
Which is disturbing, because, I mean, it would be dishonest to say that we didn't have trepidation and concerns about it. But first of all, as Sue said, the more people like Sue educated us a little bit on the psychology, like we kind of calmed down, but also what's the alternative? You know, don't make the movie, don't put it out there.
Yeah.
So at this point, we're certain they're well aware of the film. And
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm very glad you guys made the film and it's being very well received. So I have one last question that's open to anyone here on the panel, and then we'll turn it over to our in-person audience for questions. So just get ready for that. The UNHRC Commission of Inquiry on Human Rights in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, also this document is known as the COI, is cited often in the film to describe the human rights abuses committed by the Kim regime, including torture, inhumane treatment, and arbitrary detention. And it's just been about over 10 years since this report was released, and new efforts are aimed at clarifying the linkages between North Korea's human rights abuses and its illicit weapons programs. So to you all, why is this connection so important, and how else can we renew these efforts to hold North Korea accountable for its human rights violations?
Well, obviously, I mean, it's very important. In fact, I think one quote that I said in the film, I was referring to the COI Commission of Inquiry. Even so, actually, in the film, I said several years ago. So that shows you when that scene was filmed. It's actually 10 years ago. And you know that COI it says, and I quoted that in the film, that the only comparison in terms of crime against humanity, that's the only comparison that's happening in North Korea is Nazi Germany, and I think that was the quote that I used. I do think it's very, very important because, again, everything stems from awareness, and in terms of for policy too, and for all the human rights advocates now say we cannot just focus on North Korea's policy on just the WMD, the weapons of mass destruction, the missile test. Human rights component have to be integral part of overall North Korea policy. So for that to happen, this kind of report is very important in just raising international awareness. And we need allies. We cannot do this alone. It has to be a global movement. And you've seen it with South Africa and apartheid movement. You need a global pressure. Again, it's not also, for example, just North Korean regime, again, on China and China's policy of what they're doing to the North Korean refugees and so on. Right. So this is a 10th year anniversary. So I think that I can't say enough about the importance of it.
Right. If you guys had any other thoughts, Seohyun? Yeah. Yeah. All right. So then we'll go ahead and turn it over to our audience for questions. Please wait for the mic to come over before you ask your question, and just state your name and affiliation as well. So if anyone has any questions, you can just raise your hand. Oh, we have one right here.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Angelo Torchia. I'm a Korea Society member. I was just wondering why the pastor couldn't go into Thailand. Like he said, he said if I go into Thailand, I'll get arrested.
Right.
Because all the other people.
Right, because they were seeking asylum in Thailand, but he wasn't. So he would, ostensibly be crossing a border illegally.
So he had to go back, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
He went with them, but he went back.
He crossed.
He had to go
back to
all
Laos.
the way the same route back.
Oh yeah. Oh okay.
Every time.
The mountain too? Climbing the mountain?
Yes.
Oh man, wow.
Well, he flew back.
But back to the...
Back to Laos.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, back to Laos. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right, any other questions? Oh, I think I see one back there.
To Rachel, this is amazing. The work you've done and the risk that you've taken for your life to create this film. I feel really ashamed that I'm sitting here. That really, I mean, and then Seohyun, you are an inspiration to all the other young people out there, and hopefully they will see you and be inspired. And to Sumi Terry, you are, you worked in the national security establishment in the US of A. I mean, I'm so proud to say that, you're Korean. I'm a fellow Korean woman, and this is just amazing. One thing I wanted to know is, what can we do? What can we people do who are so really interested in this issue and really want to humanitarian assistance to everybody suffering and wanting to escape? And what are the institutions in Korea doing? Like maybe the Unification Church. They have so much money, and they say that they're so into all of Korea, the peace in Korea. And I'm just wondering, what other institutions that Koreans can reach out to ease this very serious humanitarian issue? And this is probably a question to Sumi Terry.
Well, Rachel can also answer some of that.
Probably not as well.
Well, first of all, thank you for coming and in what's today's Thursday night and watching this film. I think this is the beginning. That's the first step. I think that's why I say it's so important to be aware, right? So awareness, everything starts with awareness. So you took the first step, and I hope you spread the word and talk about this film. But it's also, with awareness, I think then the pressure has to come. This is what I mean by, that's why I use South Africa apartheid situation as an example where we were able to change by pressuring the regime. I don't necessarily think, because I've been working on North Korean issue for so long, that we are necessarily going to change the North Korean regime. But I do think we can continue to pressure like outside governments like Laos or other regimes, and also the U.S. government, because our policy, and I can say this because I've been part of the U.S. government, that it's an overwhelming focus on the weapons and not enough about the humanitarian issues. And then on a sort of a more micro level, there are a lot of NGOs and communities that are doing good work, like Pastor Kim's network. I mean, he's still doing a lot of work. We just traveled with him, but he will periodically go back and save 3 people and come back and join us for film festivals and go back and save 4 people. It's not only Pastor Kim's organization, but like Liberty in North Korea, another organization that we were linked with. And there are other NGOs in South Korea that are part of this. So I think there's ways that we can either financially help or some other way that we can continue to help. And then, ultimately, in terms of long-term approach, I do think we have to figure out a way to help the North Koreans by also, I'm a big proponent of information penetration campaign. We're trying to send information into North Korea to help the people in North Korea raise awareness, and because fundamental change can only really come about by people of North Korea. But there's a list of organizations that you can, contribute in some way, voluntarily, either volunteering with your time or other contributions too.
You can go to our website, beyondutopia.com, and it can start you off with some organizations. And I don't know if you have any other organizations that you want to reference or.
I can't think of now, but on top of what Dr. Terry just mentioned, I truly believe that we need more of these kind of documentaries, because what I'm really grateful for Dr. Terry and Rachel Cohen and the whole team behind these documentaries, that they created a new window into the real life of North Korean people. Now people not only can understand, they see it and then they feel it. And I believe that the people who are sitting in this room might not remember the whole details of the story 10 days after, but you are gonna remember how you felt today in this room longer than what we can remember. So hopefully, can you please promote more your web pages for donations?
That's it. And I do want to say that, to Sue's point about trying to get information in, that we are doing a partnership with Voice of America to try to create a radio version of the film in North Korea and other countries that won't make the film available.
Right.
So.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. Bring the mic over here. And while that's happening, I also want to plug in the Korea Society as well if you want to learn more about these issues.
Yes, Korea
and
Society
also,
and Liberty in North Korea. Now I can think of more.
Learning more about North Korea, South Korea, and just building your own itinerary or arsenal of knowledge. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So it was an amazing film. I was very moved, and I've watched a lot of films about North Korea and documentary films. And one of the things I'd love to know is, do you have any plans in terms of affecting policy, like creating a movement? Because I think you have something very invaluable here. It's extremely emotionally moving and intellectually engaging as well. And I just wonder, because there are two bills in Congress related to North Korea. One is lifting the travel ban, and the other one is allowing families to visit, and peace in North Korea, peace with Korea. It's encouraging diplomacy. I don't remember exactly what the bill, what the content says, but I just wonder if it could be used in that way, or if you have any plans in your impact campaign, because I think ultimately the U.S. has a lot of power in this situation. So I'm really glad that you're able to show that to wide audiences in the United States and in film festivals.
Do you want to start? Well, so first of all, yeah, I mean, we absolutely hope so. So right now, this film is shortlisted for Oscar, and the nomination comes out in a few weeks. I do think people are more aware of it, including the policy circles. Like Foreign Minister Park Jin, even in South Korea, South Korean policy, it's not only the United States, but also South Korea policy in terms of defectors, when it changes with different administration. But for example, Foreign Minister Park Jin invited me to come out a few weeks ago, last 2 months ago, and we premiered it in front of the Foreign Ministry. And then the Unification Ministry did that too, to train in a way to show the Ministry of Foreign Ministry and Ministry of Unification so everybody else can see it. And then, Minister Park Jin, Foreign Minister Park Jin also made a speech that he says, bringing North Korean defectors to South Korea safely has got to be one of the most important national security policy, something like that. So I feel like we are making an impact in terms of the U.S. Policy. We hope so. We're hoping that President Biden gets to see it. I think we got a word that at least former President Bush side or is seeing it or something.
Has he?
Well, he
trying.
He asked to see it, so we sent him a link.
And if we are shortlisted, we have.
So we are trying to reach out to the senior policymakers, because you are absolutely right. That is the whole point of a film like this, to raise awareness with the public, but also to be able to have impact in the policy making community.
Right, and part of that is, if we are actually nominated, that will spur a whole lot of, all of a sudden news shows are going to be interested in this, and that will help engage Congress even more. I mean, we have publicists in DC that are trying to use the films, to answer to your point, but I think the more awareness of the film and sort of the more prestige that it gets, the more doors are going to open and the more people are going to be interested, and so then it has a better shot of being part of the conversation.
This month, I won't talk about which one, but there's going to be a number of important media shows that will cover this film too. So be on the lookout for it.
All right, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, we'll go ahead. Get the mic here as well.
I know we can hear you.
Oh, mic's for the recording.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Sorry.
Thank you. But in the end, I grew up in Korea, and I actually lived in States more than I grew up in Korea. But I'm wondering about these films are exploring the world, and in Korea, still, even though there's criminals or there's murderer, and then there's still the privacy reason that they're not showing their face. So now I'm kind of watching whole throughout this movie film, and then wondering that how each individuals, including Pastor Kim's, that their safeties is my major concern, because when they're living in the States, it's a different story because it's a little bit further. But now, I know that there is a still threat down there, even though the sugarcoat of this, successful of K-pop cultures and all this, K explosion right now. But at the same time, deep down and underneath, that I actually heard and seen some of the, college grad and so, the families, and my families are from, Gangneung, Gangwon, and then, my dad's side, some of the, peoples are like disappearing, and this is back in 60s and 70s, of course, political reason. But these movies are explored, and I'm just wondering about how they're each individuals with his family, or either they're showing the whole face off,
So they are totally behind this movie. And when we started working with Pastor Kim, and then he invited us to embed with the Rowe family and with Seohyun, part of our deal was that we would be willing not to include any of the footage of them, any of their stories, basically not have a movie if they didn't consent to it with like the full awareness of what that consent meant. So like right before Sundance, we were cutting an alternate version without Seohyun. But ultimately...
In case Seohyun didn't want to show her son for his...
Right. Pastor Kim and Seohyun have been well known for a long time. Pastor Kim has said, and this is a quote, that he saved over 1,000 North Koreans, and from God's perspective, that's a good deal. So he's fearless. He's not going to go to certain places, as you can see in the movie, but he is, and Seohyun. Seohyun, through this movie is the only way that she can feel activated, and that she can, as she says, keep her son, stay connected, and gives her some sense of hope and activism. So they are entirely, they ask all the time, do you need us to come back? What do we need to do? Do we need to go to London? Where can we promote this movie? So they're behind it. And the Rowe family is thriving. Dad works at a tofu factory. Mom is studying to be a social worker to help other defectors. And the girls are, one of them's super into K-pop.
She wants to be a K-pop star.
Yeah, imagine that, yeah. One of them.
Yeah. But you're asking a very, very important question, and believe me, this was a central question for our film team. At every step of the way, we took security very, very seriously, and we let Pastor Kim lead the way. And Pastor Kim, he himself was told by South Korean National Intelligence Service that North Koreans are actively trying to kill you. This was before even our film. So that's why he doesn't go back to China or so. But they wanted to be part of this. And again, that's why we had alternate versions of this whole film, even just few days, weeks before the Sundance. So it's a very important question. And this is something that we thought very seriously about.
Yeah. Wonderful question. I think that is all we have time for today. So if you could all please join me in thanking our guests here. And Rachel, congratulations again. And Seohyun, thank you so much. And to our audience, thank you all for coming and watching the film and asking and chatting with us. If you'd like to continue to support the work of the Beyond Utopia team, you can check out our event page on the Korea Society, where you'll see a link to donate. The suggested donation is $20. Also, feel free to check out some of our past events and upcoming programs, like one we have next week with Scott Snyder. And I wanted to give a huge thank you to the Korea Society team, both the policy and media teams especially, for all their support in making this event a success. And for in-person attendees, we actually have light refreshments in the kitchen, so please feel free to help yourselves and stick around.
Thank you, Chelsie.
Thank you guys so much again. Thank you.